All right. Hello and welcome to Spotlight on Sports, new podcast that iBerkshire's TV is producing. I am your host, Chris Dufoy, former sports editor of the North Adams Transcript from 1995 to 2004. Spent the last 17 years working in sports information at Williams College. Our Spotlight on Sports feature this evening will feature head coach of Mount Greylock Boys Soccer, Blair Dils, about to enter his 23rd season at the helm of the Mounties program. Of course, that includes the 2008 Western Mass Championship and the 2008 State Championship, the second in Mounties history, the other coming in 1995, on a cold, blustery day at WPI in overtime. Hats off to Mark Gerard for scoring that game-winning goal. Now, Blair, you have been coaching for 23 years at Mount Greylock. I think we've decided double-figure years of squash at Williams with Zafi Levy, and also handling some of the coaching responsibilities for the Ajax program, the Berkshire Ajax. So there's not a lot of days in your life you haven't been coaching in the last 25 years. What I want to kind of pick apart is at the beginning of this is when you're a young man at Bowdoin, and then of course you start your career after that, after you graduate. What was the genesis, or what was the kernel that kind of led to wanting to be a coach as well as an educator?
Yeah, so it actually goes back earlier than that. In high school, I was maybe not the most responsible decision by the Hamden Youth Soccer organization, but they let a few of us seniors in high school coach a U10 team, and we had a ball doing that. And that was the first time that I had gotten to coach a team sport. I had worked as a tennis instructor all through high school and into college. And it just, I guess the combination of coaching at soccer and having that experience and then working with individuals with tennis led to me looking at education as a career, education as a vehicle to be able to get to coach. I didn't necessarily think I wanted to coach full time or coach at the college level or anything like that, but that kind of prep school model of the teacher coach idea really sunk in with me when I was at Bowdoin, and I was fortunate enough to be able to student teach while at Bowdoin College. My senior spring, I was a student teacher at Freeport High School, and that gave me a Maine state certificate, and I was able to teach in Maine when I graduated.
Now, you mentioned you went to Hamden High School. You grew up in that area, and what brought you out to Western Mass? Was it a job opportunity, or
So well, my wife, who I met at Bowdoin College, she was a Mountie and good basketball player here back in the day, and we met up at Bowdoin her junior year, my senior year, and we lived in Maine for 8 years and taught together at Berwick Academy. And then when we started having children, we decided to get closer to grandparents, and we made the move to Williamstown in the late 90s.
Now, one of the interesting things that I kind of want to probe a little bit here is you coach at the college level with Williams and Zafi, helping them out with the squash programs at Williams, and you've done that for a long time. But there's a difference. At least maybe there, and maybe there isn't. I mean, maybe I shouldn't just jump out and assume. So is there a difference between coaching college and high school aged people? I mean, obviously the ages are similar, 4 years apart at the end, but your approach has to be a little bit different, or does it?
Yeah, and I think part of it, my answer here might be, part of it may be the different demands of the two sports that I coach. So we have the college squash team. It's an individual sport. Yes, it's a team sport, but you're coaching each individual. And I think for what I find is that in that sense, my demands as a coach, it's much more about finding what things work for those individuals, and what kinds of things can I say and what can I not say in the middle of a match to try to help that athlete perform better. I think you have to understand, that the Williams kid is not someone who needs a lot of prodding to work hard and to be dedicated and to, do the extra things in the off season to try to get better. So some of those kind of things, we put them in place, but those players work very, very hard to come into the season prepared, ready to go. So I do find that in terms of, I think I find at the college level, it's much less about specific skill instruction or technical instruction, and it's so much more the mental game. I feel like it's almost like the 10% technical, maybe 20% tactical, and then it's the other 70% is all just coaching, sort of the psychology and the mental toughness and those kinds of things. While at the high school level, there's still so much work you can do with the technical skill level, and I feel like it's a little bit more 50-50 in that sense.
Give me kind of Blair Dils' 3 keys to successful high school coaching. I mean, it probably can't be broken down that simply, but over your 23 years, and I think you coached before you came to Mount Greylock, you've probably been evolving as a coach, we're all evolving, right? So what have you kind of found that works for you that has made the Mount Greylock program so successful?
Well, one thing is really that I've tried to work on a lot. Maybe I didn't do it as much as a young coach. Is to try to develop those relationships with the students, to see how their day is going, to check in on them, to see how the college search is going, and those kind of things, just so that they feel comfortable. And I think if they have a good, solid relationship with their coach, and I'm able to do that because I'm also often their English teacher during the day, so that really helps. But that having that relationship piece and establishing that early on is something that we've tried to work on as coaches, to make our program better. There's also, I think there's on some level, and you can't obviously start with this, but we've developed some consistency in terms of just our communication with families, our communication about expectations, and there's a kind of consistency that we have, that the younger players see it and look to try to emulate that when they get into their positions as juniors and seniors. So, I kind of look at these programs where in towns where the varsity coach has been there for many years, his former players are down in the youth leagues working, and they're, teaching some of those same kind of systems. I kind of hope that that's happening too in Williamstown, and that we try to get the younger players out as ball boys and get them on the sidelines so that they can see, okay, someday, I'm going to get to play on this field, and I'm going to be in the spotlight on those, those Friday nights and those playoff games under the lights. So I'd say that would be another piece of it, is that you just, trying to get the younger players. We at practice, we start the JV and the varsity, we do the same exercises together in the beginning. So we try to, those teams, there's some blending between those teams. And so the young 8th grader who's in his second week of practice has gotten able to, knock the ball around with some of the seniors and juniors on the team. And so I think that makes it very comfortable for that younger player to develop, but then he can also look up to those guys as role models. And then when it's his turn, he's doing the same thing for the next group up.
You had the opportunity to coach your sons. Now that doesn't happen to everybody, of course. what was that like? And then obviously seeing them going on. I think you obviously Tommy went to Middlebury and played for Dave Soward, and Sam's at Hamilton right now. What was that like coaching your boys through their 4 years of high school, or even I guess at Greylock could be more, right?
Yeah.
And then watching it, and now trying to go and see them when you can play college soccer.
It was very rewarding. I'm lucky that their temperament and my temperament, I guess, made it easier for us to, talk about the hard game we've just had, or enjoy the successes that we've just had, on the ride home. So that, they were very good about sort of allowing me to be their coach and not their dad during that time. So, I did I started with Tommy in the backyard, with Nathan Majumder and Jonah Majumder and Sean Houston. We had them running 4v4s in the backyard when they were 5 years old, so that was, so we got a little head start on that. So that group was, a wonderful group, and I got to coach them all through youth soccer. And so just his Tommy and his friends, they really got to know me as a coach early on, and that was really special. And Sam is the third child, so he's pretty easygoing and could tolerate me when I got a little hot about a team performance or something like that. So
was there a lot of skull sessions at the Dils house afterwards? And
yeah, I
manage all that.
Yeah, we don't want. I didn't want to burden them too much, with that. But definitely there was. We have about a 10-minute car ride from school to home, and that was a good time to just sort of talk about, their individual performance. And we'll save the sort of the team analysis piece for the next day after I'd seen film and could talk about what we needed to do better as a team. But so I always cherished those rides home when we got to talk about games.
Tell me about what you look for, or what makes a good high school soccer player. Obviously there are all kinds of different successful high school soccer players, right? But when you're maybe even when you're holding tryouts, or what are you looking for? It's not, and I think you alluded to this earlier, it's not always about technical skill. So what's foremost in your mind when you're looking for someone that might be part of the varsity roster or even the JV roster?
Yeah, there's a baseline. We kind of break it down to the different areas that we're looking at. There's really kind of there's the technical piece that we're looking for. We're looking for tactical intelligence. Are they kind of aware of the system that we're trying to play? Do they know how to play within that system? Do they have a kind of flexibility? Can they play different roles within that system? Obviously, physical fitness is a key piece as well. And then we are looking at their sort of their psychological makeup. Do they have that mental toughness? How do they respond to difficult circumstances? Do they sulk after they make a bad pass, or do they bounce right back and work extra hard? So really, those are the 4 areas that we look at when we're evaluating a player.
It's an interesting point that you brought up, and because at what point, and this is just me kind of asking this out loud, is at what point do we start to create leaders in your experience? Like, obviously it could be at youth sports, but it also at the high school level, I think would be very important, because we talk about a lot of that at the college level. And at what point have you seen leadership being developed in a young person?
Yeah, I think you see it. I think you see it even down at the U12 level. Sure. I think you see the boys who kind of are willing to talk and willing to kind of direct their teammates, and maybe that they're often probably players who have a role in the center of the park and are kind of aware of not just themselves in the game, but also where everyone else is fitting in. So I guess that maybe that kind of tactical awareness that I mentioned maybe gives them a leg up just in terms of their communication with everybody. And once that person starts communicating and talking about, hey, you need to drop, hey, go for the ball, those kind of things. I mean, you hear that even at the U12 level. So you'll see that carry on into our JV team, where we definitely see leaders emerge, and then certainly at the high school level. I do think within the high school team, there's a big gap, maturity wise for boys between sort of that sophomore year and that senior year. So I do think that sometimes there are natural leaders at that sophomore year level, but they do tend to, in our program, defer very much to the seniors. And that's something we're trying to work on as a team to try to, especially this year, because we have a young team, trying to get everybody to communicate. But in our program, there is that respect for the captains, and I'd like to see some of my young guys be more vocal, because they are leaders. They're leaders of their class, say, but they're maybe a little bit hesitant to try to step up and be a leader for the entire team. So there is that pecking order in high school, which we don't see as much on the college cross team. We see freshmen come in who are 20 years old, and they're pretty commanding, and they're demanding of each other, and they're they could certainly be captains at sophomore year at the college level.
Well, certainly, I mean, like you mentioned at Williams, you get a certain person that they're all kind of self-motivated. You don't have to worry about that, which is at other places you do. So
yeah,
their motivation is something you have to work on.
And I would say at Williams, I can usually probably pick out who's going to be the captain senior year, after about the third day of working with the first years. You just know. I mean, because there's obvious growth that happens, but the curve is starting to flatten out a little bit, and so who they are in their first year is not as far away, as say like a freshman in high school to a senior in high school. So,
well, that's what I was gonna ask you about, is the growth. You mentioned the growth, and I mean, I think, I'm not sure, maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, you could play an 8th grader on your team if you wanted, or even a 7th grader, I guess. Maybe, is that still?
Well, so yeah, I haven't had too many 7th graders play varsity. There've definitely been 7th graders who played JV in the past.
You've had an 8th grader on varsity, I think. Do you have one last year? Did you not?
Felix Kershaw was an 8th grader, and he contributed quite a bit. Tommy was an 8th grader. Sam was an 8th grader, and they were able to get some minutes as 8th graders. So yeah.
So the emotional range between an 8th grader and a senior is incredible. Like you said, at the high school level, what are the challenges that you find in kind of having to broach that range? What kind of challenges does that bring?
Yeah, I think it's the demands that you put on a player. I mean, obviously we're going to demand, on some level we're going to demand, the same thing from every player, but we also can put a little bit more pressure on our seniors, our juniors to step up in certain situations or be a little bit more committed. 8th and 9th graders, you don't want to. Again, you're trying to cultivate that relationship. You're trying to develop that trust and that good relationship. So, you just have to be a little bit mindful of their maturity level. And, there are certain things that you probably, shouldn't say, or you don't want to kind of set up or ask a younger player to do something that is a little bit too much for them to take on. And so maybe we do treat them, they get handled a little bit differently than, say, the veteran who's been through 80 of your practices and ought to know better kind of thing.
And like you kind of alluded to this earlier in the program, you were talking about the advantage of being in school all day, and even if you don't have some of your players in your class, you see them in the halls, I imagine, or you might cross them by. Does that kind of help you be, like you said, you can ask them about their day, but also just kind of know maybe they relax and can tell you, well, today this happened, and you kind of know their mindset going into practice or a game because you're around, as if someone is not in the building, they don't have that.
Absolutely. So you can, yeah, I mean, I do end up getting to teach a fair number of my players, which is really fun. Um, but then like I'll know, like tomorrow is the first day of school
Yeah.
for Mount Greylock. Tomorrow's practice is not going to be our best practice of the year. They're going to be tired. They're going to be, they're going to have sat in those seats all day. They're probably getting up earlier than they've gotten up all summer, and so that practice is not going to go well. The day, when we have practice right after the pep rally, that practice doesn't typically go very well. So I've learned to adjust and learned to kind of read the energy level of the students and the building, and make some practice plans accordingly.
And that's great. And I tried to touch on this a little bit earlier. Things that you've learned in your 23 years. What is something that Blair Dils in 1999 wouldn't do in 2021, and what is something that you are doing differently?
Yeah, so I am ashamed to admit there may have been a few times where I maybe had the team run a few sprints after a game back in my young days when we were
Brooks style, right?
yeah, a little bit of that. So so I look at that now, and one thing that I do I'm trying to be much more mindful of recovery and the recovery times. And that's something that, we're trying to do better at the college level with our squash players. And it's definitely something we're trying to do with the high school players. We really try to fight having 3 games in a week at the high school level. So if that means we play fewer games, it means we play fewer games because the boys need that recovery time. And so if we've had a hard, game, especially on the road, on a Tuesday night, and we're playing on Friday, I think in years past, I might have just rolled out a regular practice and would have encouraged the boys to get after it pretty good on that Wednesday. But now I know we needed to take it down a notch. We'll go shorter. We're going to do more, technical work. There's going to be no, contact play, and maybe we'll do some, tactical walkthroughs, but we're going to try to let those legs, regenerate and get ready to go so that we can be better on that Friday. That's a big thing that I've changed.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, that and even that's hard. Tuesday, Friday, I think, even then that's tough to do, to get 2 full soccer games within 4 days. That's a lot, even on an 18-year-old body.
Right. So we try to go, we don't want to go too hard on, say, like a Sunday. If we have a Tuesday game, if we know we have Tuesday, Friday, we do practice on Sunday. So we want to have a good sturdy practice that day, take it down a notch on Monday. Wednesday is going to be lighter. Thursday is going to be lighter. So now, everything gets so focused on that game now. And then that's hard too, which is one thing I think a lot of high school coaches struggle with, and probably college coaches too. You're having, on some of those game days, some of your lower at the end of the bench guys are not really working that hard on game day as right. So how do you then make sure that those guys get challenged too? So we might, let's say the day after a Tuesday night game, we might have the reserves, the guys who only played maybe 15 or 20 minutes. We might have them play a hard, 30-minute, 5
hard practice.
Yeah. And give them a hard practice. So at least their fitness level is still pretty high. And so when they do have to step into a starting role due to an injury or just playing better than the next guy, they're ready to go.
Yeah, no, that's actually really interesting because that, back in the day, that just wasn't, and that's part of the evolution, I think, of thought regarding athletics and high school athletics, is thinking about even splitting up that team after a game like that, who played and who didn't. I mean, that's a really interesting evolution and probably very helpful to the success of the program.
Well, definitely. I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty decent assistant coach these days. Mike Russo.
He's not bad.
Yeah, he's not bad. So he's working with us again this year. And so now that we have 2, we're definitely co-coaches, two co-coaches. One of us can take that group of starters and do something technical, while the other can take the reserves and give them a run and give them the coaching that they deserve. So it's really nice. I mean, that's been a huge plus for our program.
I think anytime you just have that institutional knowledge, I'll call it, even though it's not institutional here, but it's that sport knowledge, that knowledge of, but not only sport, but of performance, of personnel, of people, of just treating people right. And like, we've been talking about this whole time is understanding the people that are there, but also having I mean, there's no, as far as I'm concerned, there's nobody more that knows more tactically than Mike Russo.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm sure you probably do, but
well, yeah, I'd call myself I'm the technical director of the team, and he is definitely our tactical director. So, but that's, I think, working with him, working with Zafi, the thing I do have found is that you do, if you have the personnel, the coaching personnel, you can start to individualize your instruction and your practices and those kinds of things to give people, what they need. And that's where that constant communication piece comes in. You're constantly communicating and talking, and all right, well, yeah, I saw you, you were kind of holding your knee yesterday. Why don't you do the first 45 minutes of practice and then sit out, and so you've got to just, be on top of it so that you can manage the players and help them manage themselves too, because most of them will, practice to the point where they're going to injure themselves, more, because they just want to be out there.
And that's the old school way, is, and boys grow up that way, is you push, but it's smarter not to do that, and I think that's way sport athletics has evolved over the last 10 to 15, 20 years, is be smarter makes you better, not being tougher. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't feel we're coddling the athlete either.
No.
I mean, it's really just trying to be smart and, not, push them to the point where they're breaking down every few weeks, and that's, and working with the sports medicine at Williams, that having that good positive relationship and they're good too about, getting our athletes to kind of take a day every once in a while so that we have them for the postseason.
I think that's where, you used that word recovery earlier in talking about the program. And I think that's, that's what's really, they're so good at, is understanding recovery and getting that player. And that's what I meant when I said, that it's not always about being tough. It's about understanding your body, and a coach understanding your body and understanding what recovery means to that, and your performance, not just what it means to you, but your performance in 2 days or 3 days,
Exactly.
And that's just smarter. That's just the smarter way to go down.
Yep, absolutely. And that's And so I feel, that's, when you asked about that's probably the biggest thing that's changed in the last maybe even the last 10 years for me as a coach.
Yeah, I remember when I played, in high school, there wasn't anything about recovery. There was just what can you do for me the next day? And
right. That's right.
You bought into it. So, Well, let's talk a little bit about this year. I mean, this is another beauty of high school athletics, just like college. You win a championship in May. You win the Berkshire North Championship, which is the only championship you could win last year,
right.
Thanks to COVID. You beat Pittsfield, and you finished, undefeated in the Berkshire North or something.
We lost a couple of games to Monument and Pittsfield were very good teams, and
it was a tough battle.
It was a tough battle, and we were able to avoid both of them in the playoffs, and we ended up with the 1 seed, through this sort of triangle scoring because we all had beaten each other.
Right.
And
you split with Pittsfield in the regular season. Is that correct?
Correct. And Monument, we tied with Monument in our league game, but lost to them in an independent game. So lucky to avoid them in the semifinals. And so we were able to, we played a very hard Lennox team in the semis. Julius Manemo scored a couple of goals in the driving rain. And then we played pretty well down on the turf at BCC, and we're able to come home with a final win, which is only, I think, only the second time in my tenure that we've ended the season with a playoff win.
With a victory, yeah. You don't get to do that too often.
No, you don't. So, and
even when some of your best teams don't get to do that.
Correct. Yes. So, so that was just a lot of fun, and it was a great group. And unfortunately, we graduated 9.
Yeah, it was a big number. That's a big number.
That's a big number in high school sports, no matter, even for a football team, I think that would be a tough one. And then we've also had a couple of kids decided to move on to prep school. So we're actually down 11 from our previous
that
year.
Team that won that game in May, you've down 11.
Yeah.
So what are the numbers like for you?
We're good. We have a varsity group of 17. We've got a JV group of 17. We have 4 goalkeepers. So in terms of numbers, we're in great shape. And I've peeked a little bit around the corner, and I know that there's some good classes making their way into the middle school and 6th grade, and I think we're going to be just fine for the next few years.
So you're quite young this year. What do you expect out of your upper classes, your juniors and your seniors?
Yeah.
They're going to have to lead, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, they are, and we're young. So we're young. We have a fairly small senior class. You tend to see that, I think, I don't know, maybe I think I've seen it, I guess, over my tenure at in Williamstown. If you have one good strong class, it tends to sort of maybe suck a little bit of the life out of the class that's just underneath it. Sure. Because maybe there are just fewer opportunities on the U12 team or the U14 team. So I do see that sort of ebb and flow of a bigger class, smaller class, bigger class. So we're in that smaller class rhythm right now with our senior class. And they're talented, but they're playing in positions that maybe they didn't play last year or 2 years ago. And so we're just trying to get them to learn our system that we're trying to play, both sort of our attacking schemes, and then also just our defensive shape, and trying to make that real sound, because we're going to be up against it, because we're in a new league with some very talented teams, and again, we've lost those 11 players, so it's going to take some work.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you approach a year like this where you realize you are kind of up against it in terms of experience, and because I'm sure you, in your 23 years, you've kind of gone through every situation at this point, so you've seen this before. Yeah, and how do you manage it?
Well, we got a jump on it last year by taking a bigger varsity. When you see that you're going to lose 9, you better at least have 23, 24 on your varsity team, so you can get those guys some time against the older players. So that was one thing we really expanded. That was the biggest varsity team I've had in my
last year.
Yeah, last year, just because we wanted to get those guys as much practice time with that older group as possible. So, but I have a great junior varsity coach, Seth Rogers. He's been doing it for a long time. Almost, he's probably up to 15, 16 years now. So that continuity has helped a lot. So he's able to use our system or some version of our system, and coach the kids up the right way to play. And a lot of our kids do play in the off season too. So they enjoy club soccer, and they would consider themselves, soccer first players. And so that also helps. So, we're not trying to just sort of grab an athlete here and maybe turn them into a soccer player. A lot of these kids sort of fancy themselves soccer players from a pretty young age.
Okay. Well, are there anybody you want to mention that we should look out for? Or
Christian Sullivan is a captain, senior captain, and he's been a solid player for us for the last couple of years, and he's real anchoring our midfield right now. One of the other captains, Diego Galvez, is just an energetic kind of a pest of a player up front. He just runs around and creates havoc, and then
hires defenses out.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got a couple solid center backs who are juniors, Josh Rudin and AJ Kruger. So those our spine is looking pretty good. And then
that's critical. So that's good.
What's that?
I said that's critical. So that's
that's good. So and then we're just just looking for those guys out on the flanks to really kind of step up and keep improving every day. We just we keep saying, hey, let's just get 1% better each day, and if we can do that, by the end of the season we'll be playing like a veteran team of juniors and seniors, and not sophomores and juniors. So.
Right. Yeah. Those sophomores will be juniors already. That's what you try to. I mean, that's the road through a season, the journey.
Yeah, and we're getting there for sure. So we had a scrimmage yesterday against Mount Anthony, and there were moments of brilliance, and then there were some other moments.
Those early moments of not brilliant.
Yeah. So, but we try to film everything that we do, and the boys are pretty attentive about watching. At least the highlights that I put together, or highlights and lowlights as they're called, and learn from those and just try to get better. So, and that's, having film of each game, allows us to do that. And that's a critical piece of our program too.
Well, right before I let you go, I mean, you seem really excited and enthusiastic about it. And I was just wondering, how do you stay that way 23 years into it? I mean, obviously you love the boys, you love the kids and the game. So I guess that's a good place to start. But it seems like you're as fresh as you were back in 1999.
Well, I hope so. I'm a lot smarter than I was back in '99. That's for sure. So, no, I say we, Mike Russo and I and Seth, we all love the challenge of, we get this new group of players. In particular, this group, there's a lot more, newer faces, and we just love the challenge of kind of getting those guys all, getting going in the right direction, getting them to, buy into the system that we're playing and buy into improvement on a daily basis. And it's fun designing, exercises and activities for them to do in training that are easily translatable and they can use and bring over to the match and help us get better. So it's a puzzle. You're always trying to figure out which pieces fit where, and then how you can get those athletes to grow and to really kind of get that confidence so they can just play at their highest level without thinking too much about it.
All right. Well, hey, that is our Spotlight on Sports podcast for this week. I am your host, Chris Dufour. I want to thank my guest, Blair Dils, for joining us and throwing out some knowledge. We much appreciate it. And hopefully we will be back next week with another episode of Spotlight on Sports for iBerkshires.com and TV. So we appreciate you listening and have a good week.